Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We do apologize for the delay, but Dr. Kabruka, as you know, is very much in demand, and I think it took some effort to get him out of the hotel since so many people waiting in the lounge for him. So we're going to extend the meeting for 10-15 minutes to make sure we have the allocated time. Before we start, it's just housekeeping stuff. Can you please put your phones on silence? And I'm going to start with myself.
This is hard for a man who began the phones.
What we're going to do today is, after I introduce our guest, Dr. Kabruka, he will speak for about 20 minutes or
15.
So, and 15 minutes.
Max.
Okay, he will speak 15 minutes. That means more questions. And the interesting thing here is that although we are in Chatham House here, it is not, the meeting is not run under the Chatham House rule. So you are free to quote anybody. And so, Donald, you have to be careful what you say.
Oh.
So it is really an open meeting as such, but we'll ask everybody before they raise questions to identify themselves, obviously, and we hope these questions is not long statements. With this, really, I will start by introducing Dr. Kabruka, although I think he doesn't need much introduction. He has been the president of the African Development Bank for the last 10 years, since 2005. He actually at the end of his second term, and as a good president, he's going to leave after the second term. Are you going to leave after the second time? You know, okay. He's not going to change the constitution. And I think your meeting is in May, is it? The annual meeting. So he's really serving in his last few weeks as a president, and that's why actually probably doesn't care to be quoted in the record since he's leaving office. Anyway, they cannot do anything, and they cannot fire him now. So we're going to have a free discussion, I hope, and quite frank. Prior to that, Donald was finance minister and minister of economic planning for Rwanda. I think he was there for about 7 or 8 years. Before that, he was in banking and international development field. So he has a illustrious career, actually, and he holds a doctorate degree from Glasgow University, but nobody's perfect. Without much ado, then we really start the play, and we'll ask Dr. Kabruka, please, to let us know. This session is streamed. I don't know if we're going to receive questions from online as well, but we'll deal with whatever questions. Donald, please.
Thank you.
Floor.
Good afternoon. You know, Mo Ibrahim is a friend of mine. So I want to say 2 things to him. I'm not looking for the Mo Ibrahim Prize because it has been given to my friend, President Pohamba. Number 2, the rules of the African Development Bank are not at my disposal to change. So you can rest assured that I'm retiring in September.
Excuse me, Donald, is it more comfortable to speak sitting
No,
down?
I'm fine.
I don't know you know, but Donald just out of hospital, he had a serious operation. And
It's okay. I'm fine.
okay.
Thank you for your kindness, Mo. And I'm happy to be at Chatham House. And I thank you for the invitation because since I became president, I think I've received about 5 invitations And I feel ashamed to say I failed to honor all of them. And I made it a point that before I leave office, I really had to come and pay my due respects to this venerable institution where a lot of important discussions have taken place and where I think all of us have a lot to learn. So my apology to Chatham House. And I want to say that being here in the footsteps of many illustrious people who have been here, I feel very proud. I also know I'm not British. I know this is budget day. I hear that many of you are waiting from Westminster to see what are the goodies which Mr. George Osborne might give you. So I understand that you made the big effort to come and listen to me because I have no goodies to give. Now, when I was told that the issue I had to answer was, what are the tough decisions Africa must take in 2015, I had two thoughts. First thought was this. In fact, Africans have been taking tough decisions for a long time. Perhaps even sometimes tougher than many other parts of the world. So why is it now that is expected we need to take tougher decisions? What is so different between us in Greece, between us in Kazakhstan, between us in Brazil, between us and Ukraine and Russia? What is so special? What is so exotic about us to be asked to take tougher decisions? And I want to spend some time on this, because that is part of the answer itself. Number two, I was reminded of a dinner I attended. I know this is being streamed. And Henry Kissinger was speaking to us. And he said something which has stuck to my mind. He was referring to American foreign policy. And he said, look, when it comes to American foreign policy, Americans have to decide about the following. Some things are so important that you must do something about them alone if need be. But he had it. Some things are so important and you have to do something about them, but with others. And he added, but some things are also so important, but you can do nothing about them. I've reflected seriously about Henry Kissinger's statement over many decisions which all of us have to take. And so as I walk you through about what I think we should do as Africans, I will put them in the categories of those which are so important that we must take them irrespective of what the rest of the world says or does, because they're important for our future. But there are others which, frankly, we can only deliver with others. And there are others for which there's nothing we can do. This is how I would like to approach the problem. And I want us to have a conversation more, not a lecture from this pretentious living president. But I know why I've been asked this question, because it is a déjà vu. I recall at the beginning of the financial crisis in 2008 in Tunis. I received calls from radio stations, television stations. So, okay, Africa has been doing very well. Now Lehman Brothers gone, collapse on Wall Street. So is this the end of Africa's story, Africa rising? Now, by my training, I very suspicious of ex-cathedra kind of positions. So I stood back and said, well, I'll look at the numbers and I'll get back to you. So backed up by people who work on the numbers, like my friend here, very senior economist from Standard Chartered, Razia. I look at the numbers of this banking sector in Africa. I looked at all the possible metrics: liquidity, capital adequacy, portfolio quality, quality of management, earnings, the macroeconomic environment. and then the possible link with some of these toxic products. And in one interview I did with a large European television station, I said, I don't believe that Africa will suffer except from the secondary effects of recession in the north. But I do not believe that we are going to suffer as in bank failures, because evidence did not suggest that would happen. But a conclusion had already been drawn that because Africa being Africa, we will be the first to suffer. Nobody bothered to look at the evidence. But because the lack of Sanchez and others have their beef on the table, we looked at the numbers. I'll give you another example. Ebola. We have been living in Tunis for 11 years. Then we relocated to Abidjan, our headquarters. No sooner had we landed, so there was this Ebola epidemic. Okay, cancellations. No one is coming to Ivory Coast. People are asking me, should I go to Nigeria? Should I go to Kenya? Can I even fly to South Africa? Now, so I remember this joke by this young Sierra Leonean, apparently here in London. I don't know if it is true, but I liked it. Apparently, a Nigerian, pardon. So he's asked, you are from Nigeria? Fine, yes. How is Ebola? I say, well, Ebola is in Sierra Leone and Guinea and Liberia. So he went by. Then comes someone from South Africa, but how is Ebola? I say, wait, God, you're from London. London is near a free town. So that is Africa for you. There is a set of questions we're expected to answer because of who we are. But I'm not saying this because I'm suggesting that there is a set of questions we want to avoid to answer. It's only that I'm saying that each time we have to answer these questions, we must question the questions themselves. Because if we didn't do that, often we give an answer which is highly intelligent, but could be misleading and not useful for purpose of policy. Now, 2015 is a very important year, at least for people working in the field of development. We'll be agreeing on a new framework to succeed the Millennium Development Goals, hopefully, in September. We'll be agreeing on a new framework for financing development in July in Addis Ababa. And hopefully, at long last, I hope an agreement on climate change in Paris at the end of the year. That is a category number 2, where we can only do things with others. It's a tough decision we would like to take, but we can only take it with the rest of the world if the rest of the world is willing to take that decision. For the rest, we can do some adaptation here and there, but the decision requires that multilateral solutions are effective. I could say the same for Ebola, by the way. Now Ebola, thank God, has come down. But let's step back a moment. If today Ebola was declared in Juba, in the middle of Bangui, is the international community better prepared to respond than you were last year? I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And I've said so in public. So we've got bits in the international system which requires fixing, but because probably these are issues concerning very poor countries, they are not top of the list of the agenda. But those require fixing for us to take the decisions we must take together. Now, having said that, and knowing the chair here, him and I have many arguments about our own responsibilities to our own people. Let me say that whatever happens in Africa today will probably be a result of the following 4 forces. I like to call them a vortex of forces which can be controlled or uncontrolled, depends upon what to do. Number 1, the demographics. The trend of demographics now up 2050 is what it is. No one can do anything about it. You know the numbers. Up. Not only up, internal migration. Not to the big cities like Kinshasa and Lagos and Johannesburg, but there are also small cities all over the continent. A massive process of internal migration unseen in human history. Third, what I call the incomplete transitions, both on the economic side and on the political side, and I'll explain. In the mid-1980s, Africa was a pioneer of doing things which Europe or some European countries must now do to combine macroeconomic reforms and deep structural reforms for sustained economic growth. By the way, I recall as finance minister of my country, one of the IMF staffers who was working with me is now working with one of the European countries on exactly the same things. So, there are some decisions which have been taken in Africa in the past which have delivered result, but they are incomplete. Macroeconomic stabilization is a means, but a means to an end. The end must be microeconomic reforms, structural reforms, which make investment possible. On that front, we have lots of work to do. I don't want to enter technical details because this is not the place for that. But for me, this is the number one issue we must address. And doing so, we need also to avoid some kind of complacency. To think that, all right, the macroeconomic crisis is elsewhere, not here. When I look at what is happening now in the global economy, we need now to rebuild the shock absorbers at all levels, just in case another crisis in the global economy. For some countries now, whether it is debt levels, deficits, compulsory public expenditures, we're all still in comfort zone, but the decision now to be extremely careful at every number, looking at carefully with a microscope. I'm often asked, is Africa borrowing too much? That is the wrong question. On its own, it's meaningless. GDP, debt 40% is neither here nor there. You must ask the question in the context of the entire macroeconomic range of issues we must answer. On that one, there are tough decisions to be taken in every one country. And that is linked to the most important issue, the commodities. Oil prices are down, copper prices, iron ore, and so on. So what is surprising? Oil prices will go up or down, like currencies, like stocks, mineral prices. That is how commodity markets are. I spent many years in the commodity markets with my friend here, the chief economist of the International Coffee Organization. Good, I'm happy to see you. Him and I used to work on these things up and down, speculating where the markets will go. A lot of technical charts, look at fundamentals, technical movements. If anybody tells you they know where commodity markets are going, please don't open the door to the bank for him. There are some indications in the short term of where things might go, but nobody can tell you today where the price will be. There are so many factors. But what you can do, though, is to prepare to manage the situation, whether the price is 20, 30, 40, or $70 a barrel. So for the major net exporters of oil, actually, it's a huge chance to re-examine their investment plans, to look at their subsidy policies, to look at the sustainability of their fiscals in general. So I do think that rather than being looked at as, oh, what a misfortune, it's a time to sit back and say, wait a minute, how do we fix our subsidy policies? How do we raise more revenues from the non-oil sectors and so on? For the net importers of oil, what a blessing to do the right things. Get those savings, invest in infrastructure, in education, in health. For the new countries discovering wealth, what a chance to say, wait a minute, let me get to that model which works for me. Let me avoid the mistakes of the past. Because at the end of it, it's about the political economy of how you manage natural resources, irrespective of the price level. The third decisions we must take, which is quite important. I'm a leader of an African Development Bank who don't politics. It's about completing the political process, political change. And here's the problem. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, there was adoption of multi-party democracies on our continent. That's fine, it's very good. But the number of parties in an election are only one part of the democratic process. So when people ask me, President, how is elections in Nigeria going to go? Should I now put my $3 billion? My answer to them, my brother, my sister, take the long term. Take the long term. An election time is a time for vision, to celebrate democracy. It's a time for political combat, not a time to shed blood. So there'll be noise in the Nigerian press. People will argue about this or that particular option. But at the end of the day, Nigeria is here to stay. And at the end of the day, if you make the right choices, if you look at risk, price it, mitigate for it, Africa is a place you will make or lose money, like in Brazil, like in Kazakhstan, like in Sri Lanka, like Uzbekistan, like elsewhere in the world. So our continent is still going through a transition which is not yet complete. But I don't buy the notion that somehow, because there are big arguments about elections on this or that country, Africa is about to burn yet again. I don't know if you agree more, but that happens to be my view. You and I have some arguments on this. The next decision we must take is about how to deal with this new threats of terrorism. Whether it is Al-Shabaab attacking the West Gate, Nairobi, whether it is the Boko Haram in northeastern Nigeria, whether it is some other characters in the Sahel, this is an international problem we must deal with as such. It might be feeding on some of the local social dissatisfactions, but it is an international problem we must all address together. And I'm glad, for example, that now in the case of Boko Haram, I see that Chad, Niger, Cameroon have come together. But they need support from elsewhere. Because I'm told some of these jihadists don't even speak African languages. Someone has to tell us where they come from. But I think it's one of those solutions which we need to deal with together. Because at the end of the day, our continent will thrive if there is stability in its politics, stability in its economics, but also an idea of what are the global public goods, global public bads we have to handle together, like epidemics, like terrorism, like climate change, I've just mentioned. Now, in my last 10 minutes, you said I've just come out of surgery. So thank you for that. So my breath is a bit short. If you ask any African in this room, or on my continent, what is it that you want? It is not different from what people in England want, in Sweden, or in Sri Lanka. There's no exotism about this. What you want is well articulated in what is known as Agenda 2063 of the AU documents, well articulated in many of the documents of our countries. We're looking for a stable continent, a stakeholder economy. We're looking to grow the middle classes. We're looking to deal with inequalities. And we're looking to deal with what my good friend Meles Zenawi used to call handling the problem of rent seekers. I recently gave a speech at the launch of the Meles Zenawi Foundation in Addis Ababa. And I was trying to summarize my own assessment of the contribution of that great man. And this is what he said, and this, I think, the challenge for all of us to handle in Africa. It's about, not about a perfect democracy here, an imperfect one here. That changes over time. It is about whether we create rent-seeking states or value-creating states. And far too often, the problems are created by rent-seeking states, where then elections become battlefields for rent instead of political battlefields for ideas and visions. But where the state is a value-adding state, then it's a battle for ideas, a battle for visions. And I'm hoping that in all these countries in Africa, we're having elections, we need to assure the people, assure investors that we're in for the long term to create not a rent-seeking state, but a value-creating state. Secondly, the people in Africa, in every country, when they go to an election, what are they looking for? They're looking for a government. By the way, even here in the UK, but I can see one of my bosses here, so I should be careful what I say. You said so. They're looking for a government which can only do three things. Number one, a government which can deliver the services it promised to deliver. You can be the most democratic government, but if you promise you will deliver water, education, agriculture, you don't deliver, you have failed the first test of democracy. So governments must deliver what they say they will deliver for the people. Number two, governments which people are looking for are those which don't steal from their own citizens. Citizens pay taxes so they can buy security, so they can buy services. They don't pay taxes so that the elite can funnel the money to Swiss bank accounts. So governments that don't steal from the people. And thirdly, governments that are accountable. Otherwise, good governments come in all different shapes. Because too often there is a Eurocentric view that democratic governments will look the same all over the world. It has never happened. It will never happen. But if the government, for me, fulfills the three conditions, it can deliver services, it is clean, it's accountable, that is, for me, is already good enough. Lee Kuan Yew, by the way, who I read in the newspapers today, is unwell. And I'm in a demand of LKY, I must admit. So if, I don't know if that gets me in trouble with you more. He was once asked, but in a young democracy, how do you ensure stability? How do you ensure that democracies thrive? And he said three things which have, for me, stuck to my mind. He said, first thing, create a level playing field for everyone. Is that a rocket science? Not at all. But if it is a rent-seeking state, you cannot create a level playing field. Because there's limited rent, so there can't be a level playing field. So, our task in 2015, let us create a level playing field for our citizens. Number two, create an equal opportunity for all. And I mean equal opportunity at entry, not equal opportunities at outcomes. Because you can give all children a chance to go to quality schools, but some might come out better than others. That's a different thing. But they should be given the same opportunities at entry. So let us get these kids from the slums. Let us get these kids from the poor families into quality education. And each African government, especially those with natural resource means, they have ability to do so. My own country, Rwanda, and Ethiopia, I can see my friend from Ethiopian embassy here, have done this with very little means. I'm not saying this because I'm a Rwandan, no, I'm saying because it is a fact. If a government wants to say, all children go to school, they can go to quality school. And in that way, you cut the transmission of poverty from grandfathers or grandmothers to children. And that can be done, and that is not a rocket science. But with those millions of children out of school, because they're in the slums, that is the promise for the future. And then Lee Kuan Yew added also, Meritocracy. You know what? If you're going to choose a national team for football, my son who is here with me is an admirer of Chelsea. I don't, Jeffrey, where are you? I'm doing propaganda for you. Where are you? Ah, he's at the back. If you're choosing a football team, the chances are you're not going to look for your son, your cousin, your brother's friend. You are going to look for the best players wherever you can find them, from the slums, from wherever they are. If you're looking for a heart surgeon, which was my case last week, I flew to get the best heart surgeon I could get. I don't care whether he's my brother, he's my cousin, that's not the issue. So meritocracy, meaning let the best man, let the best woman do the job they're supposed to do. If you want to help your brothers or your cousins, take money from your pocket and give it to them. But don't give them opportunities to run the state or to run down the state. Finally, said Lee Kuan Yew, again he said, integrity by leaders. Now, integrity is not a religious concept. It's not a concept of the good man, the bad man. Integrity is living by what you say others should live by. So if I'm president of the World Bank, I'm not predicting the future. Jim Kim is a good friend of mine. And I've done enough of that, so. But president of the African Development Bank, I said to my staff, if you receive gifts, which you do, like Richard Duden is there, he was head of our ethics committee. And the gift is above $100. You must declare it to the ethics officer, and we decide what happens to it, like you do in the British government. But then my staff hear that, well, the president traveled to country X and was given a golden watch, and he kept it. All right? There is a problem, in a sense that the values you pretend to preach apply to others, they don't apply to you. And this point for me from Lee Kuan Yew was extremely important in my own formation. So let me conclude, because I've said many things already. I do think the decisions we have to take in Africa today are no different from what have to be taken elsewhere. They don't have nothing to do with commodities or commodity price levels. Again, speaking at this lecture I gave at the Meles and I Foundation, which you are welcome to look at. I said, look, people said, but African economies have been growing because commodity prices are very strong. I said, really? Let us look at the numbers. What do the numbers say? Economies which have been growing strongly because of commodities are extremely volatile. Up, down, this way, yo-yo. But economies like Ethiopia, like Rwanda, like Mauritius, and quite a few others I've been looking at, where growth is based on investment, domestic demand, high quality policies, regional trade, might be 6%, not 9%, but it is much more sustainable. The one depending on copper and oil might be 11%, but could be 4% next year. And that is the difference. So whether you have this natural wealth or you don't have, the issue is how it is managed and the macroeconomic environment around it. And this is not a tough decision. These are things we do quite well in the bank. So let me conclude by saying this. Africans know what to do. There are no new tough decisions to be taken. Africans have been taking tough decisions for a long time. But by the way, there are also very tough decisions Europeans must take. There are very tough decisions we must take together. So I'm hoping that by the time we meet in Paris, I will not be president. Maybe I'll be a businessman like you. I hope that the world realizes that if we have been dilly-dallying for the last 25 years from the Kyoto up to now, Ask people in Vanuatu. Ask people in Haiti. Ask people in Chad. Are we prepared to continue on this path? And if so, who is going to pay for this process? Who will reverse this? So I hope that in December there is a decision. Equally, I hope that people understand, especially in rich countries, that since the global financial crisis here in Europe, please, I don't know what's going on in Westminster now, but the debate in Europe I found sometimes very sterile, with apologies. It is about a bit of austerity here, a bit of extra spending here, and there's, economists like a bit on one hand here, on one hand here, you know how we speak. But I always said to myself, maybe this is the wrong debate. The debate is something different. Because as economists, and I count myself one still, we know that there's something we call, remind me, Razia, we call it the law of the fallacy of compositions. Something can make sense for me if I do it alone. But if all of us do the same things, it's no longer meaningful. In fact, it can be damaging. So if all of us go into policies of synchronized austerity at a time when the growth pulses are so weak, the result will be weaker growth in the global economy. But there is a part of the global economy which offers the world a chance. And that place is Africa. This way you have the demographics, you have the density, you have the young people. Yes, you have imperfect democracies. Yes, you have got issues here, but listen, if someone had told you in 1972, at the end of the Cultural Revolution in China, that China would be a superpower today, nobody would believe it. Ethiopia, in 1987, when I first visited, but the ambassador kept teasing people that when I visited your country in 87, the first thing which struck my eye was the picture of Vladimir Lenin in the middle of Addis. And I kept saying to myself, all of us at 20 years were communists of some kind. But what is relevant to Vladimir Lenin in the middle of Addis? But I understood the context. But then Ethiopia was the poster child of poverty and starvation. Today, it is the fastest growing country in Africa for the last decade, because of a number of things I've mentioned. That's where the opportunities are. This is why the Chinese are flocking to Ethiopia to set up manufacturing. This is why the Turkish are flocking to Ethiopia for manufacturing. But they're not looking for the market of Ethiopia alone. They're looking for the markets across the region. They're looking to manufacture in Ethiopia to sell to Europe, to sell to the US. When I ask them, they tell me, President, when it comes to price, we can compete by manufacturing here in Addis because of energy. You guys are doing quite well. On quality, we'll improve. We're training Ethiopians. Over time, people will be trained. People say we don't have manpower, but they can train. They had issue with what they call lead time, logistics, what they call clusters. If you want to manufacture a bottle like this, you need maybe 5, 6 other products, the clusters. And those, they are working them together with the Ethiopian government. And then logistics to Djibouti, Addis Port and all this, which are being improved all the time. So I'm giving this an example that every single region of the continent has potential to do exactly that. We resolve the issues of energy, issues of stability, issues of clusters, we train the people, and Africa becomes a new source of growth which the world needs. Outside the debate of a bit of austerity here, more austerity here, a bit of quantitative easing, and so on. I have nothing against quantitative easing. I'm only saying that monetary policy accommodation will give you a part of the solution. Fiscal policy will give you a part of the solution. But the bigger solution lies in Africa and other low-income countries. So let me finish where Henry Kissinger began. there are things which are so important that we Africans must absolutely deal with them. One of them is to deal with the rent-seeking states and instead create value-creating states. We need to create fair societies. We need to deal with inequalities. We need to create inclusive societies, not because it is the fair thing to do, but because you grow the middle classes, you grow a stakeholder economy, and you're increasing the purchasing power. There are things we must do as 54 small economies. When the founding fathers founded the African Union in 1963, they accepted to keep the colonial borders, to keep the peace. But they took the decision at the same time that we must create a single market across the African continent. So let us work on these non-tariff barriers, allow people to circulate. In this way, the dynamism of this market will become real. And thirdly, let us deal with subject which is Mo's favorite speech everywhere, and I'll leave that to him. How do you build institutions which are lasting? He calls it governance. I like to call it institution building. And you build institutions over a long period of time, depending on the country. This is how we shall go from, I think, 5.5%, I think Africa will do this year, 2015, to 7%, which some regions are able to do now. And this how we shall be able to reverse the decline of the 1990s. But I end by saying to you that you asked me whether some tough decisions. Yes, we have taken them in the past. There are more we must take now, alone. But there are others we must take together by rebuilding the multilateral system. And there are others, frankly, who can do nothing about them because they are in the hands of rich countries. There's nothing we can do about emissions. It's only the rich countries who can stop the emissions. But for those set of decisions where we have the powers to influence, I am convinced that the Africans are prepared and determined to do so. And I want to tell you that as I leave the African Development Bank, I am convinced that you have an instrument here to help in that process. In my 10 years I've been there, I've seen Africa transform. I've seen confidence building. I've seen great aspirations from young people. And I've seen that Africa has now taken not an exotic partner, but as a partner, like another part of the world. So I want to thank you for inviting me. And I want to say to Mo Ibrahim that what I'm looking for is a conversation. If I've said anything controversial, I know you'll protect me. If I've not said anything I should have said, it's because you said I should be careful with what I say. And I hope that I've abided by your command. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Donald. I mean, I offered you 20 minutes, and you said you're going to speak for 15, and you ended up taking 40.
Really?
But we enjoyed every minute. That's why I did not to try to stop. I think it was good enough really to listen to him. So we have actually 15 minutes now to take some questions. So what we need really is some really good, sharp questions from the audience here. And wow, we see so many takens here. Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for a most instructive presentation. I am Khalid al-Mubarak. I am the media counselor at the Embassy of the Sudan in London.
Of the Sudan?
Of Sudan. In London. My question is about what you have said, that certain decisions have to be taken together with others. It's about the international financial system. What can be done about the outflow of billions of money unchecked from Africa to the rich countries? And what can be done about the remittances of the diaspora to Africa being charged unfairly high rates, as an ODI report has revealed last year. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to take more than one question really for efficiency. And okay, I think I'll give the second row, please, if you don't mind. I'm trying to.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Carl Wright, Secretary General of the Commonwealth Local Government Forum. Mr. Kaburuka, first of all, thank you for an excellent presentation. You mentioned two things briefly, the experience of Rwanda, your country, and the post-2015 development agenda. I was recently co-chairing a United Nations meeting on post-2015, in fact in Moldova, and two things came out of that, which I think are relevant to Africa. One is the importance of what my good friend Helen Clark calls the localizing of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and having a bottom-up approach. And of course, Rwanda is a classic example of a country that's done very successful decentralization policies. So my question is, do you think that the Rwanda experience on decentralization is relevant and applicable to other countries in Africa? And secondly, talking specifically about the forthcoming meeting in Addis on development finance, the other thing the United Nations meeting I was at recommended was that the Addis meeting should look at the issue of how far resources could also be localized so they really reach the community and the grassroots. Again, a bottom-up approach to development. Your comments, please, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask really everybody just ask just one question?
Yes.
Because everybody say you have the chance to ask more than one
really
question,
fair
including
for me.
other people.
Yes.
Lady over there.
Thank you very much again, Dr. Kaburuka. Laura James from the University of Cambridge. I was very much struck by your universal, non-Eurocentric ideas of what good government is, and particularly the third one, accountability. And I wondered if you could give us an idea of how to measure accountability in a way that still wasn't Eurocentric, that didn't bring in non-universal categories, if you like. How do you tell whether a government is accountable if you're trying not to follow any other cultural model? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Donald, briefly, if we just touch the issue, once you can ask, let other people ask questions too.
Listen, I don't know if I have all the answers. I'm hoping that you can help me get some answers too. But let me begin with the illicit flows. Precisely. This follows in the category of where we can only find a solution together. What is illicit flows? There are many categories of the illicit flows. But the biggest one of them is what the lawyers call transfer pricing. The all multinational corporations handle their businesses. So as a result, value is being transferred out of Africa to the rich countries. I know Prime Minister Cameron here tried when he was head of the G8 to try and look at all these tax havens and all these complex models of how companies hide their incomes and revenues. Now, if I recall, inside the G20 and the G8, there was a process to try and resolve this. We are still waiting.
OECD produced the recommendations.
OECD produced the recommendations. We're still waiting. But frankly, part of the discussions in Addis Ababa on financing for development must be an agreement. Must be an agreement that the multinational corporations should invest in Africa or somewhere, but they should pay taxes, due taxes, like all citizens of the world. Taxes in their own countries, but also taxes in the countries where they're getting wealth.
Where the profit arise.
Unfortunately, the Minister for Minerals for Guinea just left. It's a pity. But that is a perfect example of how countries are being ripped off legally, like, there's nothing particularly legal about it, except that it's ripping our countries of abilities to create value. Now, we have set up in the African Development Bank something called the African Legal Support Facility, which by the UK government, the Dutch government, and others support, which has been helpful to countries wishing to negotiate contracts, deal with vulture funds, ensuring that they get value from their products. And we're encouraging as many countries as possible to use this facility. but it falls in that category of hard decision, which we have to take together. Now, is the Rwandan decentralization example a good example for other countries? It's a very good model. It has worked for Rwanda. Long time ago, I was working on this. You can approach Rwandan officials to start working now. But I think it has demonstrated that when you give responsibilities to the people, when you actually show there's a link between taxation and delivery of services, how you actually get a very sweet spot. Because at the end of the day, a citizen pays taxes expecting services. Now, when you get the combination to the person, over time it builds up a sweet spot, which I think I would recommend to as many countries as possible. Fiscal decentralization is not easy. It's a challenge, but precisely that's why it is interesting. And when I compare to many countries in Africa where you have got a huge centralization and citizens are far away from where decisions are made, I've seen a huge difference. I was in Tunisia during the revolution, and after the revolution, I visited a country to try to understand what is it we're getting wrong. And I was amazed at how some of the simplest decisions involving citizens have to be taken in the capital city. And I said, what a wasted opportunity. So yes, I think that we need to think about how to link up citizen empowerment and decentralization. And the model you mentioned in Rwanda is an excellent one, which I would recommend. Now, there was a question on diaspora.
Budget and accountability.
I come to that. I think that we should not count African diaspora as simply a source of remittances. I take strong objection each time we talk about diaspora is, okay, so how much remittances are they taking home? For me, the most important remittances they can bring is the knowledge they bring back, the networks they bring back. Look at the Indians, the Chinese who are in the Silicon Valley, the knowledge they've taken back. So for me, the idea that our young Africans who are abroad, their simplest source of money is something we work upon, of course, technically speaking. You can do so many things with it. But I think the most important for me is the knowledge they bring, the network they bring, the experience they bring, which enable us to upgrade our wealth-creating machinery. Now, finally, you said to me that I'm not for a Eurocentric model of accountability. I'm not certain this is what I said. But this is what I said. I've set on the table of the G20. Thanks again to my good friend Melizana, who used to invite me as head of NEPAD to go with him there. And I looked at all these countries around the table, the 20 largest economies in the world. And I concluded they cannot have come to this point by following the same path. Some of them were neoliberal capitalists, others were state capitalists, others were, welfare capitalists, others were muddling through, others had their own solutions, but at the end of it, they have created a huge amount of success and wealth for the countries. Now, some of them are stuck at what the economy is called the middle income country trap. They now have to work backwards, particularly India, Brazil, and China, to work around inclusion, inequalities, issues of corruption. What I'm saying to you is they have reached where they have come from different paths. So to ask Africans to come to this same destination by following the European path is what I say is not possible, because Africans are not Europeans. Africans will have to define their own models, make their own mistakes, fall and rise, but along the way, they will come to a point which will be one they themselves have developed over time. Now, if there are any defects along the way, in terms of accountability, in terms of any other variables, it's up to them to correct them. But I don't think we can say there's only one model in the world of accountability, of governance, of institutions, which all countries have to follow. This is all I said. That said, I might be wrong, but it is my view.
Can I just add one thing here? Unfortunately, as African, we really not in the position to be able to go and colonize other people. I would have loved to. That will be a very easy way for development. But, you know, many European countries use that route. But the time is gone, unfortunately. And yeah. Can we ask more questions, please? I have too many people, and well, I have to give you a chance since he said you were his boss. You know.
Yeah,
so
this is my boss.
We'll be in trouble.
Thank you. Duncan Hart from the UK's Department for International Development. Today you've talked about tough decisions for Africa. I would like to ask you personally, President Kaberuka, what do you think the top two tough decisions that you or your successor will have to take to continue to position the African Development Bank as a leader of transformation in Africa?
Thank you. Very precise question. I like that. I need to go to the back, please, a little bit. Okay.
Thank you very much. I think my question partly follows on from the first one you had here.
I can't hear you, sir.
Sorry, my name is Kobina Hughes. I'm a UK Ghanaian national, and I have actually moved back to Ghana to live and work. And I'm only back here today because of you.
Of him.
Well, because of the two. I flew in this morning. I live and work in the energy sector in Ghana, and
I just asked you for your name, not your history. Just ask the question.
well,
Your question, quickly. We don't have
absolutely.
time.
No, the energy situation in Ghana is very bad at the moment, as in most African countries. And as the previous questioner asked, I just wondered how you saw, in terms of priorities for the bank, where investment should be going, whether energy was one of your priorities, because the governments cannot do all of this on their own at 1,000 kilowatts.
It's for the bank.
Okay.
Okay. One last question, please. Really good question. Okay, madam.
Marion McGowan, University Business School. Human talent development. Your own bank even rated this as have I time to repeat? Okay. Human talent development, institutional building, governance, or whatever, the correlation between the two. I don't believe Europe or anybody, as you said, it's not about adopting other models, but what I am interested in is the template. You spoke about education, the tertiary, the junior, etc. But I'm interested in a model around public administration that integrates governance, anti-corruption, all the issues that you spoke about, the challenges, and a program that's African customized.
Madam, the question, please.
Question is, do you believe that this is something that the Development Bank should be investing in?
Human development institution building, is the bank able to invest? Can you very briefly respond to these three questions, please?
Yes. First of all, recommendations for my successor, that's a tough one. You know, you should always be careful before you make recommendations for your successor, because there's a saying in America that when the American president is leaving, I don't know if it is true, that he writes a very personal letter to the successor, and it's very confidential between the two of them. So if I have any recommendations to make to my successor, I will do this American way. I will definitely not give him or her this advice in public to be disrespectful. These are very competent people. They have their manifesto they are selling. So let them promise. But there's one thing which the bank will have to rethink. And you and I know what it is. It is a funding model of development. A Dutch friend of mine said that, talking about music, that when I was born, we used to listen to music on the gramophone. You know the thing which was turning around with a needle? And then by the time I was a teenager, we had something called a cassette. By the time I was man, I think I was doing graduate school, we had, CD. Now you're listening to music from outer space, from all kinds of things. But the funding model of development has not changed from the gramophone era. Now, I have no time to delve into this. So whether it is the World Bank, whether it is the African Development Bank, they will absolutely rethink this funding model. And I'm referring to the IDA and the African Development Fund. Whether to remain a closed envelope every 3-4 years going to donors looking for money, or whether to become an instrument for leverage, an instrument for providing ways in which private capital can be attracted into African development. Now, whoever is president, the bank will have to do this. By the way, the World Bank as well. The second thing which the bank will have to do, irrespective of whoever is president, is that the African Development Bank was created fundamentally as an instrument to create Africa's single market. We have made a lot of headway on tariffs. Tariffs have come down significantly. In fact, if you look at many countries, now the tariff bands are what, 30, 15, 5, 0, thereabout, I think. So that's no longer the issue. But the big issue in the room now is actually the one which does not require money. It's about free movement of people. It's about Schengen type of agreements. It's about all these administrative paperwork which is delaying businesses. So I hope they can do what the East Africans are doing in Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda now. They are making so much progress. It's incredible in this area. Let the people of Africa move. Let them trade with each other. That will require a leader able to articulate this message because it requires no money. To give you an example, there is an agreement in Africa that we should deregulate the aviation sector. Because the sector is not deregulated, travel in Africa is costing 40% above of what it should be. Now, that does not require money. There is a political decision. Let us implement that decision. So I do hope that whoever is elected, this does not require money. They can look at the funding models and some of these decisions which have such a huge impact, which must be implemented. For the rest, I'll give him an American letter. Oh, hi, an American letter.
Donald, I think we have time for one question, which I decided to ask myself. I'm not above corruption, okay, guys? I have the mic. Really, it's a personal question. I mean, I hear a lot of rumors around that what Donald's going to do next. I mean, I heard that some banks approaching you. I heard that some funds are approaching you at some universities. We all understand that it's time to make some money and to finish building your house in Rwanda. But maybe you just give an idea what is the new edition of Kabroka will be. Where are you going to go from here?
More clear, you have been spying on my bank account. No, serious. I think that my 10 years in the bank have given me a passion for Africa, which I want to put to the use of this continent. I think that we're at a turning point in Africa whereby someone like me, there is someone like me on once every 10 years. I understand now how the world financial markets work. I understand African risk. I see the opportunity of crowding investment into this continent. And I would like to make this happen. Now, you seem to say people are approaching me. I don't know who told you that, but...
the word is out on the street. I mean, yeah.
Whether they approach me or not, I'm determined to ensure that the world now, which is not short of capital and is looking for a return, and Africa, which is looking for opportunities to become another pole of growth, becomes my next passion. And if I make a few dollars along the way, so be it. But I think somebody like me has a responsibility to continue doing that, because being president of the African Development Bank is one part, but I think the mission which Africans elected me to do is something which I feel strongly passionate about, and I intend to continue. Now, it's for the bankers talking to you. You can tell them that I'll make up my own mind.
No, this is really good news. So Donald Kabruka will continue to work for Africa, and I think that's wonderful news. Thank you very much, Dr. Kabruka, for your time, and thank you very much. Thank you.